let's talk about sex and the city. Do you all remember the episode when Carrie couldn't afford her apartment? So she was looking for money while she had $40,000 worth of shoes.
I spent $40,000 on shoes and I have no place to live?
But she was looking for her friends to help her. And as she was sitting and telling her girlfriends about the situation she is in, Samantha offered to help, as well as Miranda. The only person who stayed quiet was Charlotte. And Carrie did not take that well. Just a couple hours later, she knocked at her Manhattan apartment and Charlotte opened the door. One thing you have to understand about Sex and the City is that Charlotte is positioned there as a girl from a wealthy family. She had a job at the art gallery, and it always felt to me like Carrie was resenting her for that. And the first question which Carrie asked was,
"Why didn't you offer me the money?"
Samantha and Miranda offered the money and you didn't. Why? And then Carrie has the audacity to say,
"And what kills me is you don't even have to work. You're volunteering."
Friends, let me remind you something. Just because your friends are rich, it doesn't mean that they have to spend their money on you. And that's exactly what Charlotte told her.
But it's not my job to fix your finances. You're a 35-year-old woman.
Fun fact, as they were fighting, Carrie said, even if you would offer the money, I wouldn't even accept it. So I don't understand, why didn't you just offer it? Guess how the episode ended? By Carrie accepting the money from Charlotte. So, do you think you should help your friends or relatives if they're just financially irresponsible? Here's how it usually happens. One family member does something wild, and 99% of people, friends or family, don't believe in them. They tell them that they're doing something stupid and it would be a better idea to pursue something stable. But the moment this thing succeeds, everybody flips the switch. I always believed in you. You're doing so great. Does this sound familiar? But the thing is, most of the time, their gaslighting will work on you. Because if we're talking about people who are self-made, they do feel guilt. They do believe that they just got lucky, they suffer from the imposter syndrome. And even though I strongly believe you shouldn't give money to your friends or relatives, I know that many of you do this. So today, we will talk about how to deal with friends and family once you get rich. Because you're already on the success path, and I know you're about to make it. So better to be prepared. If your relatives or friends come to you and they say that they have this genius idea about starting their business, but for some reason they cannot find an idiot who would be willing to invest in this, at least take the cut. Because the moment when you're just giving them money, then the thing is failing, then they need a little more and then a little more, you will just keep on giving them money.
Is there a deadline? Is there a contract? They're not a bank, so where does it go wrong?
Be an actual investor. So that way, they will take you seriously. I don't know if you guys saw this tip on TikTok recently, but this famous businessman once said,
Family member comes to me and says, look, I want to build a restaurant. I need you to give me $150,000 to get started.
He will say, listen, I'll give you money, but under one condition.
You never ask me for money again, ever.
To which they respond that this is mean. But this actually exposes the nature of most of the people who are asking for money. They know that they will not stop at the first ask. And moreover, most of the time, they're not even planning on giving it back.
Dad bought me my house.
Ours too.
Yeah, like, should offer to pay him back.
No.
They're reaching out to you because they want you to figure out their life. You figured out yours, and now they want you to do the same for them. They look at you as the shortcut, and they will find many manipulations and many different tactics in order to make you feel like you actually owe it to them.
I'm your older brother, Mike, and I was stepped over. That's the way Pop wanted it. It ain't the way I wanted it.
You don't owe anything to anybody but yourself. So don't let anybody guilt trip you. When I was a teenager, my friends were constantly asking me for money. And since I often felt guilty about my privilege, I would always say yes no matter how big the ask was. And I'm not alone when it comes to blurry financial boundaries. A recent survey shows that 60% of Americans lend money to people they care about. But here's the thing, many of them do this not because they're generous, but because they feel uncomfortable saying no. Despite of growing up in a healthy household, I didn't know how to say no until I was like 25. I genuinely believed that saying no would make me a bad person. But through therapy, I learned that setting clear boundaries doesn't push people away. It actually makes them respect you more. That's why I want to thank our sponsor BetterHelp for making this episode possible. Because learning how to say no is not a personality trait. It's a skill you can learn. BetterHelp is entirely online, so it works around your schedule. After a quick questionnaire, you'll be matched with a licensed therapist who understands your worries and needs. Head to betterhelp.com to get 10% off your first months. And now, let's get back to our episode. The next thing is to be aware that some of them will not be asking you for money, but it will still be a financial favor.
They weren't even asking straight up for money. They were asking if they could use our excellent credit.
It is tricky because what they can do is mess up your credit score. I understand that this probably doesn't apply to every country, but it's extremely important in the United States. I would rather give money to my friends than be a co-signer. Because if they're actually financially irresponsible, it will directly impact your credit score. And then, once you will want to start a business or you will need a mortgage, they will mess up your chances for actually getting it. So be extremely careful when you are doing favors like this. Next, create a family fund. And it shouldn't be free for all. Let me tell you an example of Johnson & Johnson. You've all heard of this company. Jamie is a grandson of Johnson & Johnson. And here's what he shared with his audience when he was filming Born Rich. Apparently, the family is not allowed to work at their own company.
I don't even know that much about how my family started their business. In fact, none of my relatives have worked at Johnson & Johnson since my grandfather's generation.
Because we've all heard the saying that the first generation makes the money, the second maintains it, and the third one loses it. So the patriarch of Johnson & Johnson wanted to protect his company from his family. Therefore, today, nobody from the family is allowed to work at the company. They're just the shareholders. They can get the dividends, but they can never make any serious decisions which could harm the company. And I think this is so wise.
I'm the eldest boy!
Because so many companies were ruined because the family couldn't decide who's going to be the next CEO. And are you all watching what is happening with Fox News right now and the Murdoch family?
It began when he tried to wrest away company voting rights from 3 of his 4 eldest children in favor of his oldest son, Lachlan. The others took him to court in Nevada.
This is kind of an example why you shouldn't want your family in the business. But of course, there are also different case scenarios, such as the Gucci family. And things went down when it stopped being a family business and when the shares were sold to the outsiders for the first time. So when it comes to business, you just have to be extremely careful. When it comes to relatives and friends, you have to be extra cautious.
Don't ever take sides with anyone against the family again. Ever.
Fun fact, did you guys know that I'm often compared to Jamie Johnson, the original rich kid who was interviewing Nepo babies? 20 years later, now it's me. He was the one who was taking interviews from characters such as Ivanka Trump. So now you, my loyal audience, have to like this video to make sure that I'm interviewing the next generation. For example, Kai Trump. You must set clear boundaries, because if you're this only successful relative in your family or the only successful rich friend, then all of the birthdays, all of the weddings, everything will be on you. And one time when you will say no, you are gonna be such a bad relative. If you gave money to somebody and you are, God forbid, reminding them that they owe it back, you will be the bad guy. You will be the one who is out of touch, you forgot your roots, you have so much money and you're not willing to help others.
You're not a bank, you're not an ATM, you're not a credit card. You got a name, it ain't MasterCard.
When my father was helping his friends and relatives, I would often tell him, Dad, they're making such a fool out of you. Why don't you just stop giving your money to all of them? And my father would always respond, I'm only responsible for my own actions. In business, there is a saying, there is nothing more dangerous than giving money to somebody else. Because if you owe money to somebody and you don't want to return this, you will find a way how to get rid of this person so you don't owe money to anybody.
And they were shooting each other all the time. Shooting people was a normal thing. It was no big deal.
That's why my dad always told me, if you are giving money to somebody, it should always be a gift, and you should never expect anything in return. I think my father can afford this behavior as the first generation. I, on the other hand, have the pressure of being the second generation. I've personally seen how my dad was being used by everybody. Therefore, I made a decision that if I will be helping you, I will make sure that you will remember that. You will be there for me when I need you. So, it's better to say no one time loud and clear than to quietly say it many times without people understanding that no is a no. Have you ever lent money to your friends? Yeah, that happened. I had actually some good cases and some really bad ones. I'm sure you're not interested in the good ones, so let me tell you about the bad ones. Somehow, it's always the people who have the fanciest Instagram who are asking you for money. Based on their Instagram, they only shop at Hermes, but somehow they need $500 from you. Anyways, long story short, I gave them the money. We were friends for like 5 years, and that was the end of the friendship. I reminded them to give me money back a couple of times, and then they just changed the number. Bitch, I know your Instagram handle. How to say no to people when they're asking for money. Okay guys, quick tutorial. No. Generosity is a beautiful thing until your kindness turns into an expectation, and then it becomes an entitlement. And there is no cure for entitlement in friendships and family. The irony, you are fighting your whole life to be free, just to be trapped by the ones closest to you. So the question is, would you rather be called greedy by your favorite relatives and friends, or be used by them for the rest of your life? Like, subscribe, and as always, do whatever you want with this information.